You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Paul Brophy. I'm flying solo again today. My colleague Roisin is not here with us today, but we're going to keep our drive and enthusiasm going, as she always does here on the Irish Political Roundup. This month, October, is Awareness Month, and in today's program, we're going to be discussing dyslexia in detail with our two guests this evening. We have Jeanette Delahunty of the TSK Academy and Can Kiley, Can's Books here in Kenny. So dyslexia is a learning difference that affects a person's ability to read, to write, and to understand spellings and even particular sounds. Would you believe it affects 10% of the population, and it comes under the umbrella of neurodiversity, and they reckon that 20% of our population are classed as neuro divergent. So we're going to have a look at dyslexia, what it is, what are the challenges that people might face, and what supports are out there for people. Now, dyslexia can affect people in many different ways, from very, very mild to very, very severe, but with the right supports, the right technology, and the right approach, people with dyslexia can thrive. And so I'm delighted to be joined by Jeanette Delahunty, Can Quayle of Can's Books. Ladies, you're both very welcome to the programme.
Thanks very much for having me, inviting us here. It's delighted. I'm delighted.
Yeah. So, Jeanette, for our viewers out there, if we were to describe what is dyslexia, what is it exactly?
It's a language processing disorder. So what you read out there was very good, but it goes a little bit deeper than that. It's not just looking at writing and spelling. Would you believe that 10% of dyslexics can spell really, really well?
Wow.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's more of a language processing disorder. Um,
Okay.
there's different ways that can present itself. So my stepdaughter, for example, she would listen to information, but then ask, "What do you mean?" Because she's not processing what it is that you're saying. So it takes a little time for it to go in, and sometimes you have to explain it a bit differently for her to understand. And sometimes she would come up with words, um, like when she's reading, for example, she's trying to read and she might see, like, your name says Paul, but she might guess what that is,
Yeah.
based on past experiences rather than whether she can actually read it or not. It's all about
Yeah.
the language process. It's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, it is indeed. And how would you know if you're a parent and you were kind of, what signs would you be looking out for if you saw that your child or even an adult in that case may be dyslexic?
There's a number of different telltale signs, really. The stress over homework would be a major one. If they're struggling with the homework and they're getting stressed about it, some children might become withdrawn within class, or they might act out within class because they're trying to hide, they're trying to mask the difficulty that they're having. When they're becoming tired, because there'd be a lot of visual stress
Yeah, yeah.
when somebody's dyslexic, so they get tired very quickly trying to read the words. Anxiety around the thought of having to read aloud,
Mm,
um, and read in front of people can be a major thing. And people who are dyslexic actually have higher stress levels automatically because of the way that their brain is wired. So
yeah.
you'd just be looking out for things like that, the increased stress and anxiety, and the not wanting to read in front of people. Maybe those
Mm.
behavior challenges might happen as well.
And would you say our understanding of dyslexia has come on in the last number of years?
I think
I
so,
would
yeah.
think, sorry, I didn't want to cross.
You're
Yeah.
okay. I'll come
Um,
to you next.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Did you have a point that you wanted to say now, Caroline? Is it
I
relevant to what
did
I'm saying?
actually. I want to say something I think is very important. Sorry about this. Um, I noticed in my own situation, and I often notice it. I think a very, very early indicator is poor speech
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
or a severe stammer.
Yes.
I think,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, and And reason why I'm saying this is I just think that it's such an early indicator that the quicker you can actually realize, and you know that better than anybody else, the quicker you can kind of be on the alert, the quicker you can accept it, and the quicker you can get action and help.
Exactly.
No, sorry, I had to say that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And early intervention is key. And yeah, I suppose it comes back to the point that I was making. It's actually about language processing. So the speech is very much a big part of it. You ever listen to Gordon Ramsay? Do you ever listen to Gordon Ramsay? Is dyslexic, and if you listen to him, he speaks in what they call halting phrases, which is part of dyslexia. And halting phrases, basically what happens is you're saying something and you stop before you finish the sentence. So he will say something like, okay, so we put the egg in the frying pan, so and if you listen to him, you can hear that. So it's halting phrases, very much around speech, as Caroline rightly said.
Okay, that's that's interesting. And can because you're the owner of Can's Books here in Kilkenny, you're one of the largest suppliers of dyslexia specific books in the country. But you're very much on the record of your own lived experience of living with dyslexia. I suppose that probably has sparked your interest in this subject.
It has hugely sparked my interest in the subject, and I'm probably the only bookseller that I know of in Ireland and in the UK who actually is dyslexic. And because of that, I have a huge early learning section, but I do actually have a great interest in it. So I do, and I do believe how important it is. I mean, reading and learning to read is actually psychological. It's much more than just reading. It goes into all your life.
Oh yeah, exactly. Exactly. When you have a book or a Kindle or whatever, you can bring it anywhere.
You can bring it
anywhere. I'd agree. Sorry, Cam, go on.
No, sorry. Yeah, but I also think psychologically, if you look at prisoners, if you look at the amount of prisoners who actually cannot read, it's absolutely massive. I think it has an incredible effect. I think the effects of not being able to read are much deeper than just not being able to read.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're getting very much into low self-esteem, very destructive behavior. I think it's a massive area, and that's why I think it's so important to be caught young and to be dealt with and helped.
100%, yeah. And it does that. I mean, there's a lot of research out there which shows and actually proves that somebody's mental health is massively affected by something like not being able to read. It has huge impacts. And I don't know if you've looked up some recent research on the prison population. They haven't done it here in Ireland as yet, but over in the UK, the prison population, they're estimating from research that's currently ongoing, approximately 70% of the prison population are neurodivergent. So they would be ADHD, dyslexic, or autistic. And it's because it's not being caught early. As Cam said, it's not being caught early. And because of that, and the lack of understanding around those things is why that destructive behavior, the mental health, the self-esteem, self-confidence all deteriorate, and they end up going down the wrong path.
Yeah, that is very true, because with a lot of these kind of neurodivergent conditions like dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, ADHD, there's a whole kind of an emotional piece attached to it. That affects your mental health. I think that part of these conditions, I think that's the part that goes it's probably not spoken about enough, and I'd say that's what has contributed to a lot of those challenges there that people face. But as regards accessing supports for people with the dyslexia, and I know you provide like some great resources in your own bookstore here in Kilkenny.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I'm a great believer in, I do love the toe by toe. So I do. I do also love the fact the visual rulers that they can use.
Okay.
And they're €3, so they're very, very accessible. Also, children do have to read. They really do have to practice reading. So they do. And also, which I really think is so important to mention, is the TTRS, the touch typing.
Okay. So technology can play a massive role
Oh,
in helping people with dyslexia.
the touch typing is a non-negotiator with me. And it's basically a reading program. It's 32. How can I describe it to you? It's 32 lessons. Actually, sorry, it's 24 keyboard lessons, which have 31 modules in it. And also it deals with literary issues as well, and spelling. And the child
Okay,
can do
wow.
it themselves, and they can do it at their own time. So it is. And then they
Right.
can learn to type. So if they're able to avail of the assistive technology, which is very difficult,
Okay.
which is quite difficult to get for the junior cert and leaving cert, but they're actually prepared for it.
Okay. Okay. And I noticed that the Dyslexia Association of Ireland, they had a call on, and they were calling on the government to open up or make exemptions more easy accessible to accessible to dyslexia. Particularly around extra time
Yeah.
in exams. I'm sure that's something that you'd fully agree with.
When I actually did my leaving cert, I did my leaving cert in 1989. There was actually extra time granted.
Right.
Now, it's something I don't understand why the department doesn't do it, because it's not going to cost the department any money. Like, very little money. A half an hour extra is what I was granted, and it actually made a huge difference to me for my leaving cert because of the organisational issue. And I just wasn't under as much stress.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it works out for every hour an exam is you get an extra 10 minutes. So if it's a 2 hour exam, you get,
Yeah.
I think, an extra 20 minutes at the
Yeah.
end, which,
Yeah.
sometimes you might need it, sometimes
Oh,
you
yeah.
might not. But it's a great buffer and support there for someone with dyslexia if they're doing an exam.
But at the moment, the department won't grant it. And the Dyslexic Society are very keen for it to be granted. And I would certainly say that it should be granted. And it's not a huge cost to the exchequer.
No, it's practically zero.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
zero. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, really, isn't it?
100%. And with
It
that,
should
I'm
be
sure
offered
you
as standard.
hear that sentiment, Jeanette.
Sorry, yeah, I do. Yeah, it should be offered as standard. And I know that I know other dyslexic kids in school, because with my stepdaughter being still in school, and some kids haven't got any kinds of supports whatsoever because they're not classified as dyslexic enough. And you're like, just because you can do something in one instance doesn't mean you can always do that. The level of stress these kids are going through, and even as adults going back into education, the level of stress that they're going through to have to go and sit the exams, those things should be offered as standard, and they're not offered as standard. And you have to fight tooth and nail for them. And there's other technology that they could the online, and the smart pen for the live scribe. So when you're taking notes, you just put a little dot on your notepads or whatever, and the live scribe records what the teacher is saying, and then they can come back then later on and press play, and then they can type up what they need to type up using co-writers. So they're very good, but again, very difficult to get because they're going to need to get recommendations from speech and language therapists, from the occupational therapist, and they have to be dyslexic enough to be able to qualify for these supports, because those do cost money. So getting them isn't quite so easy.
And is it hard to get an assessment to access these supports, for dyslexia, Jeanette?
Yes, unless you've got lots of money. The public system is shocking. Absolutely shocking. You know, people are on waiting lists for years and years, and some of that can still come down to the air code lottery. So waiting lists in some areas would be longer than they are in others. And unless people can afford to go private, and even some of the private services now are closing off their books because their lists are 2 years long. You
Wow.
know, so I mean that's the hardest part. The best thing they can do is really when they're noticing those speech difficulties in around, you know, the early preschool ages, that they're sent through and put a recommendation through to Better Start for the AIM program, or, you know, the assessment of need from a very early age. Because once they have supports in primary school, it's much easier to keep that going through in preschool. It's easier to keep it going through primary and secondary school.
Yeah, absolutely. And Can, you said you did your Leaving Cert back in 1989. How
Yeah.
would you say um our understanding as dyslexia has changed since
I
um
think,
since
yeah,
that time?
I think, that if you can, as Janet said, it's said you need a lot of money. So you
Mm.
do. Now, I got a dyslexic assessment, cost me €750. I was told it was a complete waste of money and that I would not get assistive technology. So I had to go to an OT, into which that cost me €400, and into which I had to get the OT. Then I had to go to my doctor, who actually agreed not to charge me because he just thought it was a shame. Is that fair enough?
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I had to go back to the school, and the school had to fight. I was turned down twice for assistive technology for my son. So I was. And even though he's now been granted the use of assistive technology, which is actually helping him enormously in school,
Brilliant.
there is no guarantee he'll get it for his exams.
Okay, and
Yeah,
your son, he's doing his junior cert, am I correct?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Which is it next summer, is it?
It'll be this year, right?
This year come.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the school will apply for it. And I've been told that because he's been granted the use of it in school, and he's also been provided with a laptop, there's a better chance of him getting it. But I mean, really, this issue needs to be dealt with. So
Yeah,
it does.
exactly.
Like, it needs to be granted earlier. My son starts the TTRS in primary school, and that's when they need to start it. And because his speed now is up to nearly 70 words a minute.
Right.
So,
Very good.
but it has taken many years. You have your time in primary school to get used to it, bring in your laptop, all of this. It's the organizational end of it. As his typing teacher in school said to me, it takes me a year and a half to get the boys to plug in their laptops, to remember to bring them in. But the boys who have done it in primary school, I don't have to deal with all of that. So they can start straight into timing and things like that. But it's also very unfair on the schools not to grant assistive technology and then tell them they have to reapply.
Yeah, exactly. And the
I mean,
assistive technology, with the way it's advancing and everything, you're talking an expense, all right, to the state, but
yeah,
not as big as they might let on. Like,
no. I just think that I think they don't have any understanding of the struggle that it takes. Like, there's only one really. You always need the big boys in behind you, to get things over the line. We all know that. We've seen it in business. We see it all over. We see it in everyday occurrences. And the only person who has taken up the cause in the Dáil is the Senator Tim Lombard. Other than that, nobody else has. So they haven't got enough support to push these measures through in the Dáil. That's
yeah,
my honest feeling on it. Whereas if he was very powerful, if he was a minister, we'd have a far
mm,
better chance.
yeah, there's people saying like the budget, there's 90 million spent on pouches for phones, to
Yeah,
keep them out of the way, which, it's it's not the worst thing and not the worst idea in the
no,
world, but 9 million could be spent in other ways, like assistive technology will be
no,
one.
huge, and it would help all of our children. So you see, if they can type their exams, Paul,
Yes.
What my son would say to me is, it keeps it in your head, and you don't have to use the extra. You don't have to use any more energy writing. That it's much easier to write down from your head to do your typing. He says it kind of gets more lost when you're typing and writing. That extra, it causes a lot more pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you're typing, you can see it clearly and legibly, and if you can see your mistakes and correct your mistakes as well, which is great as well.
And for their confidence, it's wonderful. So it is.
Exactly. But there are many examples. I'll put this to both you. There's many examples of people, very famous, very successful people with dyslexia who have, gone on and done great things. So it just goes to show, with the proper, help and support, people can thrive.
I would really believe that, and I say that every day. The dyslexic children today are doing extremely well in the outside world, because once they can get over their issues, and if they're helped and guided through, they're no snowflakes, I can tell you. They're well used to disappointment. The edges have been knocked off them, and they are streets ahead of the other children today, once they can deal with their issues and learn to cope and use their coping skills. And they are thriving in the outside world.
100%. And they
I
do
think
say, sorry. Sorry, Jeanette, you're going to say something there.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that because for a long time we weren't focusing on strength. We were seeing kids as being stupid. That was the old way of looking at things, but now we're seeing these amazing creative minds that we have. And when we can see the potential, and when the famous people are in the limelight, it gives parents hope, I think, to know that, okay, so my child isn't stupid, there isn't anything wrong with them. And at the end of the day, there isn't anything wrong with them. It's just a differently wired brain, a different way of thinking. And then most creative people, my colleague does all my social media, she's dyslexic. My event manager is dyslexic. So like, the creativeness that you have there, we have to stop looking at this in a negative light and see what they can actually do. If you put a dyslexic person in a room and ask them questions that they've been learning, they'll be able to answer them. It's getting it down, as Cam said, from brain onto paper, that's where that processing difficulty lies. If you just ask them to do it verbally, it's another accommodation they can think of in the leaving set and the junior set. Why can't we record our answers rather than having to write it?
A very good point. And
I actually think that's a brilliant point, and I'd absolutely love that.
Yeah, and
it would be so much easier for them, because they know it all. They know everything. Like, one thing I noticed, my daughter, my stepdaughter, she's very perceptive. You read her a story, she can memorize the story. So when she goes to read the story, she looks like she's reading it, but she's not actually reading it at all. She just memorized the words so that she doesn't, it's a way of masking, so she doesn't embarrass herself.
Yeah, and someone with dyslexia, as you know yourself, they're great problem solvers. So there's obviously a reason why so many have been very successful in business and other walks of life. And of course, you have a very prominent and successful business in Kilkenny as well. So do you think the dyslexia, it also, there's strengths that come with it that I'm sure you utilize every day?
There is strengths. I think that once you develop your coping skills, which I do think takes time and effort, and also your confidence increases as well. I do think that you can find, I think that and if you happen to find your niche, like I found mine, which I always say how lucky I am, actually. I do believe that you can go from strength to strength. An enormous amount of them, I see them in business constantly. So I do. I see them in business.
Dyslexic people make great entrepreneurs. They're
Yeah.
brilliant business people, and they're people. They are people. That they are really good with people. There's none of that. What's the way I want to say this now without being really rude? There's none of that stuck upness, I suppose. That they try and say it in a really polite way. There's none of that stuck upness. But they're actually just people. They love people, and everybody gets along with somebody who's dyslexic. They're the most empathetic people you'll ever meet in your whole life. And it's such a nonsense when you hear people saying, oh, if somebody's got a neurodivergent condition, then they're not empathetic, or they can't do this, they can't do that, and you're like, that's utter rubbish, because like the amount of people who are business owners and entrepreneurs and have gone out there and proven how damn clever they actually are against all the schools turning around and saying they weren't going to be. It's phenomenal. The strengths are phenomenal.
Absolutely.
You see, I think that they've developed their strengths. The ones who've been able to get through the system successfully have actually developed these strengths that we're talking about. They also are kind of used to not being picked for things. They're used to being bottom of the pile. So they kind of have nothing to lose. And also quite a lot of them don't care what people think of them. So that's a wonderful skill alone.
Yeah. I had a former boss of mine. She was dyslexic, and she rose to a very prominent position in lots in work and outside of work. So she was a very, very impressive person that I knew with dyslexia. And just probably just a little bit of an aside here. Jeanette, there's a condition called dyscalculia, which would be dyslexia through math, which might be, some might say, is dyslexia's first cousin.
Dyslexia for numbers.
Yeah. So would for our viewers out there who might be familiar with that type of kind of dyslexia, would you just give us a little bit of a brief outline on it?
I think it's hilarious that they give it such a horrible name. Like, I mean, dyscalculia is just like, nobody can say it. Like, whether you're dyslexic or not, it's so difficult. You know how many times I've practiced saying that in order to get it right, and I still mess up quite a lot. So it's essentially dyslexia for numbers. So people have difficulties with numbers. So they might have difficulty with the numbers themselves. So similar to that, like getting the 3s back to front and not knowing between the 6 and the 9, those kinds of things. And of course, then the actual doing the maths themselves. So they might be able to figure out the numbers, but the plus and minuses and the divides can cause a huge problem. So for somebody with that, there's an awful lot of dyslexic people who have dyscalculia as well, and dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is where there are difficulties with the writing. So the writing might be illegible. People not being able to actually read what it is, what people are trying to write, which is what Shanna would have. So she has dysgraphia. Her teachers essentially told her not to bother handing up any more work because they couldn't read her writing. So she wasn't dyslexic enough to get any kind of support for typing, or it wasn't spotted. But it's harder to spot in women, I think, than it is in men, because we're much better at masking.
Yeah, that's that is true. I've heard that before. And speaking of dyscalculia, I actually have it myself. So, and I'm mildly dyslexic as well. So just putting it out there for people. So, well, they do say, was it 20% of the population is classed as neurodivergent? So, but that is a strength. Because that's 20% of people who kind of see things in a different way. And if people didn't look at problems, we wouldn't find solutions.
And I think the more of us, go ahead, Cam.
No, sorry, I'm not great at this. I just wanted to mention something about about the maths. There's two. There's very, very good good maths books, which are not really well advertised.
All
And
right.
they're basically called The Power of One, Plus Two, Perform with Time, and Times Tables. And they're absolutely excellent. I couldn't recommend them enough. And the other thing, which actually drives me mad about maths, is in sixth class, in primary school, they should be using calculators, because the maths course is all based on calculators in secondary school.
Correct. Yeah, 100% agree with you
And
there. Yeah.
if they know how to use their scientific calculator going into secondary school, it's a huge help. And the reason why the calculator is so important is because our math system is based on problem solving, because that's what the multinationals want in the country, and they're our major employers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of all makes sense. But I don't think that
you.
the calculator is emphasized enough how important it is. They're actually meant to be able to use it. The secondary school teachers, maths teachers, expect them to be able to use their calculator when they arrive into secondary school.
Yeah.
Right. That's a very, very interesting point. And can you stop this dyslexic friendly books? What does a dyslexic friendly book look like, and what's the difference between a normal book that, or I wouldn't say normal, but
Yeah.
a conventional book that you will buy?
The difference would be, first of all, the paper is actually a cream because of the glare. You know, the way some of us have glare, certain paper makes it glare.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's extreme is the print. Now, Barrington Stoke is the main dyslexic books for dyslexic children, and they actually have their own print, Barrington Stoke have, and it's very, very good. And also the words they use. They use the most commonly used words. Like, you know, the way they say that, how many words do you think you need to be actually able to read?
Oh. What, 1,000?
No, 230.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
230 words. It's 75% of the English language. Now,
Okay.
that's very simplified. A lot of the words are from, where, how, very hard to describe. Does that make?
Okay, I get
you.
Yeah.
And they're words that dyslexics struggle with because they're very hard to describe. Because dyslexics, a lot of them have a lot of picture vision and are very good at it. But what I'm saying to you on this is like that would make you functionally illiterate, but still you'd be able to do the basics if you knew the 230 words.
All right. That's really interesting.
Yeah. See, so
hear me come with 1,000, I was way off.
Yeah. It's but when you see the words, it's called.
I would have said more, Paul.
Yeah. When you see the Deutsche List, it's called, right? Called the Deutsche List. You'll understand why it's difficult because of the words. You'd spot them straight away. They're the words that dyslexics have a lot of issues with.
Right. And the dyslexic books that you sell, I imagine they're pretty popular.
They're very popular. So they are, and the teenage ones are also very popular. But they actually use a lot of these words, and they use no unnecessary vocabulary. So you can get the story quite quickly, and very confident to build up readers. And they're also age appropriate, and they're very nicely put together.
So there'll be everything from, say, an 8-year-old up to 18.
Yeah, up to 18. We use them as well for language classes. If people are looking for books for language classes, they're used as well. So they're actually a very good product.
Right. Yeah, that's good. And we were chatting off air. There are lots of different apps out there and books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it is an industry as well as what you said. So if you're a parent and you're looking for resources for your children, or if you're an adult, let's say looking for these resources, you have to be kind of conscious of what you're purchasing and what's the best fit for you.
Yeah, and most importantly as well, that you get value for your money. And I'm sure that Janice knows that more than anybody else, because there is a lot of things that you are sold in this new in this educational world that really doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose, Jeanette, there's people that may have gone their whole, adult life, and then all of a sudden they were diagnosed with um, dyslexia. Would you have worked with adults who with dyslexia during your time through your work as a neuro diversity consultant and trainer with the TSK Academy or through in other walks of life?
I've worked with dyslexic individuals, yeah, and other neurodivergents. Um, I don't tend to go one-on-one with people anymore because I do training in organizations and in schools. I think the impact is much bigger if you can get to the teacher and get the teacher to change the way that they're doing things so that they can support all of the individuals in their classrooms. And the same with organizations, it's about that. But if somebody is looking for me specifically, I will 100% take them on board and give them a few coaching sessions and see where else they might need extra support. Yeah, absolutely.
And as regards, as you said, teachers, they play a massive role in this. Are teachers becoming kind of more aware and more kind of up on kind of different strategies to help students with um, dyslexia, in your opinion?
Are you talking to me, Paul?
You
Yeah,
can put it
yeah.
to both of you, yeah.
Well, now they have a Casino in schools, right? And they're in charge of applying for the assistive technology. I think they have like kind of the idea, but I think that the government is very poor at the follow through. And I think it should be made an awful lot easier. So it is. Like the forms are very difficult to fill out. And it's not that your child isn't even badly enough, isn't bad enough to get them. It might be because there's a simple mistake made on the form. I think the government is making it far too difficult. And I mean, it's almost impossible to get a scribe.
Well,
yeah,
yeah. I had a scribe for my leaving cert,
yeah,
and I'd say by today's standards, I probably wouldn't have got it.
Yeah, yeah. So
it is very difficult.
Yeah,
we do need to kind of the Theno is very good, but we do need to target the teachers as well because there's so many neurodivergent kids in mainstream education. And because the teacher curriculum, if you're doing your teacher training, it doesn't cover neurodivergent conditions unless they go ahead and specialize in something. So to have that awareness of, that there might be some visual stress or a child might be struggling and they're not acting out. Nobody, not a child on this earth gets up in the morning and says, I think I'll see how much trouble I can cause today. That doesn't happen. So if a kid is acting out, they have to think outside the box and go, okay, what else could be going on here? Is it possible that they might be dyslexic or they might be ADHD? And what can I do? Something as simple as, and Karen was saying there about the cream colour books. If a teacher brings into their classroom cream coloured paper and that's given to everybody, it's not singling out the dyslexic person. Oh. Whereas at the moment, it's all integration. So you're going to be still singled out. Everybody else has white paper, but this one person, because they're dyslexic, they're getting special treatment. They're getting cream paper. Hey, look at the dyslexic person. They need more help. What we need to do is create an inclusion and that culture of inclusion and acceptance in the schools. So if everybody has cream paper, then there is no exclusion. There is no, hey, who's the dyslexic person in the room? It's all, everybody's got the same thing. A neurotypical person will adapt very, very quickly to any changes. It's the people who have the neurodivergent conditions that need the extra support. If we make things better for them, we make things better for everybody in the classroom. It's that simple, really. But yeah, the government needs to change the curriculum for teachers so they understand varied neurodivergent conditions.
Yeah, because we actually had Linda Carroll on. Linda's a disability advocate here in the southeast of Ireland, and she actually made the same point that teachers needed need more support to support children with like who may be classed as neurodivergent or have other kind of uh, additional learning needs. And October, it is Dyslexia Awareness Month. I'll put this to both of you and get great to get your thoughts on it. Do you think having a month like that is important to kind of highlight, the issues that we've been talking about um, today, and try find more ways to get more supports for people with dyslexia?
I think any bit of anything that draws attention to this subject, I think, is extremely important. But this is a subject that people have no interest in unless it affects them directly themselves. And now that, I'm sure, is the same with many things. But you'll get nobody outside interested in it unless it affects them themselves. That's what I do think.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. Like nobody's interested unless it directly affects them. It's the same with school. I find that people are calling me when they're in distress. They're firefighting all the time, and instead of putting the supports in place to start off with to avoid that situation, they're waiting until it's come to a head before they're calling. And now it's affecting you. So now I need some support. Otherwise they're not interested. But awareness months are really, really important. I would like to see a world where we don't need those because all of our differently wired brains are already accepted. I know I'm an idealist, not a realist, but I would like to see that world. And from somebody who's like I have ADHD, it's also ADHD Awareness Month in October as well.
Right, yeah.
So I think that it's really important that we are raising that awareness so that more acceptance can come on board, that it's not the stereotypical things that we still have that belief of from ages ago. Things have changed.
Absolutely.
Paul, there's just one thing there we didn't keep on. I know we're rounding up. I just wanted to mention about the DARE scheme, for getting into third level.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. Now, that is actually that is extremely good. Now, it has to be applied for through the CAO. So it does. Yeah. But basically, there's 5 to 10% of places kept in a lot of courses.
Okay.
For dyslexic, dyspraxic, neurodiversity, and they're not competing with people of the same points. Because if you have dyslexia or dyspraxia or whatever, and you have been granted the DARE, and if you get the points to get into the course, then you're taken off. So you're competing with people of lesser points. So you have a very good chance of getting into the course if you're anything between 5 to 20 points short. And there's also they give a lot of help in third level. They're much better at it than they are in second level.
I agree with you on that one. Yeah.
There's a lot more help out there that can be given, that's given to the students if they look for it. That's extremely important. That it gives children a much better advantage of being able to get into their course. That's why I wanted to mention it.
Oh yeah, I think that's a real golden nugget there, because there's probably people will be watching this who are sitting there leaving cert, and that they might fall under that category. That could be massive for them.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely massive. So it would, and also they would miss out on the supports in college as well.
Right. Well, as I say, every day's a school day. Well, Can and Jeanette, thanks so much for coming on the Irish Political Roundup to talk about the subject of dyslexia. Of course, this month, October, is Dyslexia Month. And if people want to find out more about the work you do, Jeanette, how can they do so?
Well, they can email me there on jeanette@tskacademy.com. Or my mobile is probably easier to get me than the landline, to be honest with you. But the mobile is 085 172 8612. We have a website, which is tskacademy.com, so they can reach us on a contact us page either.
Absolutely. And Can's books, you're in James's Street for many years. If people want to find out more about the dyslexic friendly supports which
Yeah,
you
and we have
sell,
them on our
how
website
to
as
do
well,
so.
which is cansbooks@gmail.com, but we do as well. And we do get a lot of people who come in. So they do. And
Brilliant.
and also, as we just said, it's very good. I think this was a very good thing to have today, because really you were putting three people's brains together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
all have
brilliant.
different
Yeah.
perspectives. And the three of us we're all classed as neurodivergent. So we're not doing too
Yeah.
too
No.
bad to talk
We're not
today.
doing too bad, exactly.
Yeah.
An absolute pleasure chatting to you on here today on the Irish Political Roundup. So from me, Paul Brophy, I'd like to say a big thank you to Jeanette Delahunty and Can Kiley of Can's book. So from that's all from us for today. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Please do like and share and subscribe. So hope you have a great day.
And thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you.